She is the stake president's wife, and we love her and her husband. I've actually been working with Tammy for a few years. We do solar oven stuff together, and she really took off on the bread stuff a few years ago when Mike Lawrence taught it, so I asked her if she would do it again this year, and she's done an incredible job in putting together a class for all of us tonight, so I'm really excited. She has 4 kids. Her and her husband were married in 1990. We cheat sheet up here. And they've been living up here since 1995? 1999. And I'm sure that they love it up here. She didn't have that in her notes. And I can tell you she's been working on this class for a month since I asked her, and making bread, and every time she makes it, her kids come home and say, can we have some? Can we have some? No, it's for the class. So you get the benefit of everything. I think there's 6 different breads back there that you're going to get to try in a bunch of different spreads. So we're very excited to have her, and she's going to show you how easy it is to do no-knead breads. So thanks, Tammy.
No pressure, right? All right, now I'll start out by telling you I am not an expert. I got a couple of books a few years ago. Brother Lawrence was teaching a class here. He thought it was fun, and so I started making some bread at home. Debbie called a month ago and wanted me to present basically the same thing we did a year ago. This is a no-knead bread, but this time we're doing with whole grains. And so our recipes tonight, there are a couple of them in the package you'll get that are half partially whole wheat and partially white flour. And then there's also some that are completely whole wheat flour. So it's a little bit healthier. No refined sugar. We've got some honey and things like that. So it's a little bit of a healthier feel for this. I'm going to start out by mixing up a batch of dough. The stuff I'm mixing up right now is called the no-knead whole grain enriched bread. It's called enriched because it has oil and honey and eggs, things that make it light and fluffy, makes the crust soft, that type of thing. There's also recipes in here, and we'll be working with that dough in a minute, that does not have those enrichments. That is called a lean dough. But we'll be making one using the other, but it's all the same process. Okay? And hopefully I can answer questions as we go. I'm going to start out with the dry ingredients. Well, I've got a 6-quart bucket here. Something you'll need is something that's about 6 quart. It doesn't have to be round, it can be square, any type of a bucket that you can use that can fit in your fridge. Mine, I like this round one. The reason I did not pre-measure this flour, the wheat flour, is because I want to show you the proper way to measure for these recipes. Some people like to hold their cup and pour the flour in. That's too light and fluffy. We need it a little bit more dense. So we use the scoop and sweep method. We scoop and we sweep. Pretty easy. So this recipe calls for 4 cups of the whole wheat. This is the white whole wheat. I like the flavor of the white whole wheat better than the red. Everybody has, but either one you can use it interchangeably. All right, 4 cups of our white whole wheat flour. We have 3 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour. I say unbleached, specifically unbleached flour, because bleaching removes some of the protein from the flour. And we don't want to do that. We want the protein in the flour. So 3 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour. We've got a 1/4 cup of vital wheat gluten. We add extra gluten to the wheat breads because wheat flour, the whole wheat flour, has the bran all smashed up in there with the white fluffy part of the flour. The bran has sharp edges and cuts through the gluten strands that makes the puffiness in white breads. So we're adding extra gluten to help us get some lift and some rise. 1½ tablespoons of yeast and a tablespoon of coarse kosher salt. These recipes call for coarse kosher salt. It is a heavier grain than table salt. You can use table salt if you would like, but you might want to cut back on a little bit of it because the tinier grains are going to be more dense in your tablespoon. So you may want to cut back a little bit if you want a little more go ahead, but if you're using table salt, cut back a little bit. Next thing I'm going to do is whisk these together. The reason I'm whisking the dry ingredients, she needed a picture of whisking the dry ingredients, is because the gluten, that vital wheat gluten, it'll get all clumpy with the liquid if it's by itself. But if we mix it around with the other dry ingredients, it spreads it out and you don't have that, you don't have little balls of it in your dough. For the lean dough, all we would do now is pour the water in and mix it up. Because this is the enriched dough, I'm going to take another bowl and mix up the liquid stuff and then pour it in there. We've got 3/4 cups of oil and 3/4 cups, oops, sorry, you can take that one and get that. 3/4 cups of oil and 3/4 cups of honey. I use an oil that doesn't have any strong flavor to it. If you want to, you could. You might like that. But I use canola oil. I've got 5 large eggs. I've whisked around a little bit already. And I've got 2 1/4 cups. I've already measured this and poured it back in. 2 1/4 cups of, you want to use lukewarm water because it'll help with you as it's rising this first time. If you're afraid to use the water, you're afraid you're going to be too hot on the side of the water, it's better to err on the cold side. It'll just take a little longer to rise, and that's fine. You just don't want to kill your yeast with anything too hot. Okay, I whisked that around a little bit. We're going to pour all that good stuff in there. Okay, this is the fun part where you get to, your inner child comes out. They say to use a nice wooden spoon for this. It's because you got to get all the dry bits at the bottom. I did wash my hands just before I came in, just so you know. I like to just get my hands in there, and you can probably see as I'm doing this, it looks really wet and gooey. And that is just fine. That's what we want. This dough, the reason it is a no-knead dough is because it's so wet. The liquid lets the yeast and the gluten and all that good stuff just sort of do its own thing. It starts bubbling up because it's not too firm. It just starts bubbling up, and as it sits there. Now the fun thing with this dough also is, once I get this all mixed up, I'm just checking to make sure I've got all the dry bits. Once you get it all mixed up, it's almost more like a batter than you would be used to for a regular bread dough. And it is supposed to be that way. When you do the lean dough, it's not going to be quite this wet, but still it'll be wet and sticky. But that is the way it's supposed to be. Nice thing about this dough is, once we get it mixed up like this, we are going to just loosely put the lid on it and set it aside. And that's it. There's your dough. In about 2 hours, and if your house is cold, maybe about 3 hours, this dough is going to get all bubbly and raise up almost to the top of this, which is why you need a big bucket or a big bowl, because it'll fill up that bucket pretty good. Once it's risen up, you're going to take it and just put it in the fridge. For the first 24 hours, you don't want your lid on airtight because there's lots of gases building up in there, and you want those gases to be able to seep out. My lid, I use this only for dough, so I've actually poked a hole in the middle of it so I can put it on all the way. And then I set it aside on my counter, walk away. 2-3 hours later, I come back and I put that in the fridge and leave it there. The next day, I can come back and tear off a piece of dough. It has firmed up a little bit. It's still pretty sticky, but a little bit firmer. You tear off a piece of the dough and make your bread. This will make about 4 one-pound loaves. You know, I have not figured out the cost of it. I didn't. Does it? I mean, it's like 50 cents or something like that. If you figure. Okay, this dough I made yesterday. This is the master recipe that's going to be in your handouts. This does not have the eggs and the oil and that kind of stuff in it. It is a leaner dough. People like to use this for the artists Untitled Breads. You know, baguettes, the free-form loaves, that type of thing. And also if you wanted bread that you were going to be using more savory things with it, maybe garlic or anything like that, you'd want probably the leaner dough rather than the sweet dough. When I'm ready to make a loaf of bread, this is my setup. I get a cutting board or my pastry mat, put that out on the counter. I've got my flour here. I'll sprinkle a little bit of flour here on this plate. And I've got my scale underneath there. Turn on my scale. I'm going to put a little bit of flour on my board here. And you know, it's going to help me so I can get a hold of it without it sticking too much on my hands. Okay, I've got my hands here, get a little bit of flour on that too. All right. I'm going to reach in and grab a portion of dough. I'm not going to worry about measuring and being too exact with the sizes. I just want to be able to show you processes. Okay, I've got this dough. You can see it's still really sticky. Okay, you're going to get a little bit of flour on it. Make sure you have flour in your hands. Now, you don't want to do, the one thing you do not want to do is squish out the bubbles. Everybody that I've talked to and done this with before, the first thing, they get it and they want to start pushing on it. Don't push on it. You want the bubbles. The bubbles are your friends. They're what make your bread light and fluffy. And with wheat dough, it is a little bit tougher to get that light fluffiness, so you don't want to squish it. I am gently just sort of pulling the top around to the bottom, so it makes the top smooth. It gives it almost like, it's like you're just sort of wrapping it in a little bit of a sweater. A little bit of flour on that, and I'm just pulling that top down. Now the bottom looks ugly, but that's okay. So it's on the bottom, and as it rests and rises, it'll sort of squish together, and you're not even going to see that anyway. Okay, so there's my little loaf. I've pulled it all down. I formed it into a little oval, and I'm all set. Let's even see how much this weighs. This is about, almost exactly 1 pound. Okay, so here's your little 1 pound loaf. We're going to move down here. This 1 pound loaf, now I can do a couple of things with it. I can put some cornmeal on my pizza peel and set it on there, cover it with a piece of plastic wrap, and let it sit there for about an hour and a half, just at the room temperature. If your house is cold, you'll probably want to wait maybe 2 hours. If you don't want to do the pizza peel, if that's not your thing or you're afraid to or you don't have one, you can also use parchment paper on a cookie sheet. Again, you're just going to place it there, put some plastic wrap over it, and let it sit there for the hour and a half to 2 hours. If this was a bigger piece, the enriched dough, what I like to do is get out a 2 pound chunk. Same thing, smooth it around, shape it very gently, and then put it in a greased non-stick pan. And then put the plastic wrap over, leave it on the counter, let it sit there for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and let it raise. Now with this dough, you're going to find that at the end of that hour and a half, 2 hours, you're going to say, okay, it hasn't done much of anything. Typically when you're making bread, you see it double in size. This is not going to do that. This has more oven spring, is what they call it. When I put it in the oven to bake it, you're going to put, especially the lean dough goes in at 450. In my oven, I put it 475. My oven runs cold. Keep an oven thermometer in your oven. My oven's only a couple years old, and it does not run to the temperature it says it does. So you may want to check that out. I put it in a nice hot oven, 475. I put that in there, and it raises up and is just beautiful. Okay, some fun things to do. You've got our little loaf here. At the end of our hour and a half, 2 hours, what can you do with it? You can take your pastry brush and wipe it down with either egg whites or with water. Water works just fine. Wipe it down with some water and then sprinkle I like to sprinkle seeds on it. That's what I've done with the master loaf down here. That's what this one is, right here. I sprinkle the seeds on it. This is a mixture of all kinds of seeds. There's poppy seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, all kinds of good stuff. And the mixture, I believe, is in the recipes as to what I use. Brush it with water, sprinkle the seeds over the top, and again, this is right before you're going to put it in the oven, and then you're going to slash it. Nice quarter-inch deep slashes. We're going to pretend this is risen. Okay? Nice slashes in it. The reason we do that, not only does it make it look pretty, but it also gives the bread a direction to grow. If you don't slash the breads, the artists, especially these lean breads, if you don't slash them, they will open up at whatever weak spot they want to. And it still tastes good, but it's, might be a little more funny looking. This way, it tells it where it wants to open up, and it does. Then I would take this and put it in the oven, and this 1 pound loaf would bake for about a half an hour. The lean dough will come out with a hard, crunchy, crisp crust, which is what you want. The enriched doughs, because of all the goodies that we've mixed in with it, they will have a softer crust. You'll find though with the samples, all the crust is soft because I've been making them ahead of time, wrapping them up and freezing them, so that crispiness has gone away. When it goes in the oven, make sure on the lean dough that you have a broiler pan or a metal cake pan on the very bottom rack. Your bread's going to go on the middle rack. You put your bread either from your pizza peel onto a hot stone that's already in there, or you put your pan in there, and then take a cup of hot water and pour it in that broiler pan or cake pan, and then shut the door. That causes steam. You want the steam in the oven to help give that nice, crunchy outer crust. It also helps the dough to stay moist longer so that it can keep rising before it gets hard. If you're afraid to use throwing the water in the pan, if that sort of scares you a little bit, don't worry about it. You could use something like this disposable lasagna pan. I could put this in the oven and put that over top. That way any steam coming out of the bread will be sort of trapped in there. Let that go for probably about the first 10 minutes or so, and then you can take it off. By then, most of the job of the steam is done anyway. You can take it off then. That way it can get nice and brown. But you want the steam. With the lean dough, you do want the steam in there. That's what helps get that crunchy crust and the rising and all that. All right. Okay. Let's do a different thing. We're going to take this nice little loaf, and we're going to do focaccia. Focaccia is a fun bread. This is focaccia right here. It's not really flat like a pizza. It's maybe an inch or so thick. You can slice it in half. If it was a tiny bit bigger, you can slice it in half and use it for sandwiches. You can cut it in wedges and just serve it alongside pasta or dinner or whatever you're doing. So we would take the dough, and again, we're not squishing it, but we're going to gently just sort of stretch it out. Okay? Gently stretch it out until it's about 3/4 of an inch thick. I have my little roller here. You're going to do this on your parchment. I'm going to roll it out gently to about 3/4 of an inch thick. Now also, as I'm handling this piece of dough a lot, so it's going to start fighting me and not wanting to stretch. If your dough does that, put a piece of plastic wrap over it and just walk away. And come back a few minutes later. And by then, it will relax and let you stretch it some more. So, 3/4 of an inch thick. I then, for this particular, you can put anything on here. This is what I put on mine. I took some onion, sliced it up, and put it in a pan with some olive oil and softened it. You don't want to brown it. Anything you put on top of your bread, you don't want to brown it, because once you put it in the oven, that brown will, by the time the bread's done, it will have become black. So I'm just softening it. So just soften. So there's some onions. that have just been softened in some olive oil in a pan. I'm going to spread them out here on top of my focaccia. On top of that, I'm going to I've got some rosemary. You can put any herb you would like on there. This is some fresh chopped rosemary. We'll sprinkle that on there. I've got a little bit of coarse salt and a little bit of pepper.
I'm going to open it.
Almost got it. Got it. Okay, I'm going to sprinkle a little salt and pepper on there. And then I'm going to drizzle just a tiny bit of olive oil on it. You don't want it soupy with olive oil. You don't want it pouring off the sides. Just a nice little drizzle. Okay. I will then take just a piece of plastic wrap, set it over top of this, let it sit there for, I think it says about 20 minutes, and it'll give a little bit of rise, a little bit of fluff. Then we're going to, again, we'll put this in the oven. We're going to cook it for 20 minutes or so, and it's going to come out like this. Now, again, like I said, the fun thing with this dough is that you can do so many things with it. We'll set that one aside. Let's do pizza. Let me get another piece of dough. I get some more flour on my hands so I'm not sticking. About another pound or so of that. I don't know if you can see as I'm pulling it off what that looks like. Okay. Get a little bit of flour on there so it doesn't stick to me too much. And we're just going to take it and gently pull the top around to the bottom so it has a nice little outer, so you don't have just a big gooey wet thing. It makes it a little easier to handle and it's going to make it prettier as it cooks. Okay, pizza dough. We can do pizza dough a couple of ways. We can do it, flatten it and put it on the pizza peel with cornmeal underneath it and then slide it off onto our hot stone. You can also do it on the cookie sheet. For right now, though, because I'm going to do a couple of different things with this pizza, I would probably just use the cookie sheet. Spray it good with some ham. Bye, sweetheart. Thanks for coming. He had to come and show his support, and now he's off to meetings. You can do it on the pizza peel with the cornmeal. You can do it in the pan. I would probably do it in the pan. It's just easier for me. That way I can just press it out in the pan. I'm going to do it on here, though, so that I can show you a couple different things to do with it. Okay. Now, one thing with pizza and flatbreads, they do not need to be risen up. So, it can be a little bit more rough and vigorous in our stretching. Okay. I'm going to flatten this out a little bit. And this fun stuff down. Okay. You're going to flatten this out into a nice little shape. You can do rectangle. You can do... You know, and this is fun for the kids too. They can each have like maybe a fist size and everybody make their own pizza. If you'd like to do that. Now, if I was home and this didn't want to stretch, I would walk away from it and just say, see you in a minute. The 1 pound, start sticking a little more flour under there. Okay, let's say that's thick enough. Okay. Usually about a pound though. I mean, I'm going to get a nice big, probably 12. You can probably get a 12 to 14 inch circle there. All right, good enough. Pizza, I got some sauce.
Can you use spoons?
Oh, just use a spoon, got it. Okay. Got some sauce. You got your some cheese. I got some pepperoni. Of course, you can do whatever you want on it. Now, with the pizza, you do not need to let it rise. Once you've made it, go ahead and just put it in the oven. Either off the pizza peel onto the stone or put your pan in there. You don't need to add steam for this. It's not going to be cooking in there that long. We're not looking for that crunchy crust. When I make my pizza though, some people like it softer, some people like it more cooked. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put the dough on the pan. I'll put it in there for maybe 5 minutes so it's partially cooked. Pull it out, put my toppings on it, and put it back in. Just so that way it gets that extra bit of cooking for that crust. Okay, here's my pizza. I put it in there, and I think it says maybe, 20, 30 minutes, and you're all set. Another thing you can do is, with this dough, is make something called a sandwich loaf. Or you can call it like a stromboli, or whatever you want to call it. And I'll use this. We're just going to make a pizza sandwich. Pizza sandwich roll. You're going to put your toppings on here. Let's say you want turkey and some spinach and some feta cheese. Let's say you want ham and Swiss. You're going to put those toppings on this rolled out dough. And then from the short end, you're just going to roll it up like you would cinnamon rolls. A nice little pinch there to close that up. Now we can do a couple of things with it. I can drop it into a loaf pan and let it rise in there. I like doing that with the enriched dough. If I put sweet things in there, maybe some, I've got one here. This one right here, I did that with. I put some dried cranberries, some chopped up white chocolate, a little bit of cinnamon. But I put those things inside, rolled it up, and then on the top I put an egg. I wiped it with an egg wash right before it was ready to go in, and put some sugar on top. Okay, so this pizza roll, I can put it in a pan, cook it in the pan like a loaf. I can just set it on the parchment and put it in that way. I can put it on the pizza peel and slide it onto the stone. I believe it says you're going to let that rise probably, about an hour? Okay. Times are on the instructions you'll get. So you'd let this rise and then go ahead, put it in the oven, and it'll puff up, and when you cut into it, you've got nice little, here's my here somewhere.
I'll go get one.
Oh, right here. Let me just cut this. You'll even see. I haven't even opened this one yet, so I don't even know what it looks like in the middle. Oh, God, look at that. You see that? I don't know if you can see it up there. But that looks good, doesn't it? It's got, pecans, that was the other thing. So, but you can do that with savory ingredients or with sweet ingredients, whichever. Another fun thing you can do with this roll, take your scissors and cut maybe 1 inch or 3/4 inch.
It'd be easier with a knife.
It might be easier with a knife. I don't know. There you go. You can try it with a knife, whatever. Cut it with something. And you're going to set them out on the cookie sheet and then bake them, maybe probably for about 20 minutes or so, just like you do wood rolls. And they're these fun little pizza wheels or whatever wheels, and the kids sort of like them. Okay. Put him aside. What others words did I have? Okay. Buns and rolls and croissants. Okay. I've got here, this one is 4 ounces of dough. My son and I made these the other day, and it was delicious for a little sandwich. I use this with the enriched dough. Buns and rolls, I like to use the enriched dough. I don't want to bite and have it scratch the top of my mouth. The harder dough, maybe the crusty stuff, no. So if you're making sandwiches, hamburger bun, you could roll it along and use it for a hot dog bun. So this is about 4 ounces, which is about the size for a hamburger bun. If you make a 2-ouncer, it's going to give you a little biscuit. You can also, and then you would just put the dough in muffin tin. You can also put it in the 9x9, put the little 2-ounce balls in there next to each other, and they become the pull-apart rolls. Let me show you shaping of the little ones. It's the exact same thing. Boy, am I making a mess of it.
No.
Okay.
We just pick them up.
We get our little golf ball size piece for our little 2-ounce roll. Same thing, we're gently just pulling it across the top, down around to the bottom, stretching it, get rid of all those ugly little edges. And you can see the bottom. The bottom is a bunch of whatever, but by the time it's done, it's great. Okay, and then I would set this either in my 9x9 next to each other or in the muffin tins and let that rise and put it in the oven. And of course you use the sweeter dough and it's going to be a sweeter taste to it. One other thing you can do, if you're using the lean dough but you don't want it to be as a hard crunchy top, brush it with some butter. That tends to help work. Some olive oil and then maybe sprinkle a little garlic on it. Or you can even, what else did they do? Oh, they made little teeny tiny balls. They took this size, not even this size, they cut this like into 4, so it was almost like big marbles. And take 4 of them and put them in the muffin tin, and they made the clover leaf shape when they all puffed up together. This dough is just really fun. You can do a lot of things with it. What else have I got here? For croissants, you roll your dough out into a nice big circle. And then I didn't bring my pizza cutter. I'll use my pizza cutter and just cut it in half and then in quarters and then cut that in 8ths and cut it into 16 pieces. Now you've got a whole bunch of triangles. You can put a little olive oil on there and some garlic and then roll those up starting at the big end of the triangle, roll them up. You could put cinnamon and sugar on it. These ones here, I've got cinnamon and sugar and I smeared on them and then I rolled them all up and then I brushed them with an egg wash after they were done rising and then sprinkled them with some raw sugar, which is that coarser grain, light brown sugar on top of that with some cinnamon, and cooked those. There's some of these to sample back there. They're quite yummy. This dough is very versatile. And the other thing you need to remember is don't be afraid of it. Have fun. You know, of course you wouldn't want to try something new right before you have company, but you make this dough. There's enough in there for 4 pounds. Take a pound out or half a pound out. Try it. See how it turns out. Experiment with different toppings and fillings and just see what happens. If you don't like it, don't make that one again. Okay, last one. Apple strudel, that's what I was going to do. That was like this one. It's like this doing the sandwich loaf, but the recipe you'll get it's called apple strudel loaf. I made this one the other day. The kids really liked it. Okay, I'm going to get about a pound of dough. Oh, thank you. Get a little more flour on here. You can. You would want to mix it up, let it sit overnight in the fridge. Then you would portion it out, wrap it up good and tight, airtight, and then go ahead and freeze it. When it comes time to use that dough, you'll want to let it thaw out in the fridge overnight, 24 hours, and then go ahead and just use it as you would have. The apple strudel loaf, I'm going to go ahead and, it's basically the same thing as we did for that little pizza loaf over there. We're going to squish it out.
Did you tell them that it can stay in the fridge for like...
Oh yeah, there's times on there. Some of them, the one that's enriched with eggs and stuff like that, you probably want to use that within maybe 5 days. You don't have to use it all right away. The stuff that's not enriched, I believe it has a date of like 10 days.
So what she's saying, what that means is you can make your dough up like this and stick it in your fridge, and this isn't going to be up there. And stick it in your fridge, and you can just leave it in there for like 2 weeks and go grab a hunk, stick it on the thing, let it raise a little bit, and cook bread. You can make your own little loaf of bread for you to go soup at lunchtime. So it's very cool because you can do, this does do 4 pound loaves at a time. And I did look it up, I don't know how much cost?
How much?
Huh?
It does. It continues to, that's why you're not having to knead it. It's continuing to bubble and fester, I don't know what you call it.
It
The
grows.
yeast it grows. Yeah, it'll stay, once it gets to about this high and you put it into the refrigerator, it's not going to go any higher. In fact, it might shrink a little bit over the next few days slightly. That's as big as it's going to get. So this is the 6 quarts is about a good size container. Whether it's a square, short one, a tall, skinny, round one, whatever. A 6 quart container should hold you. Okay, I've got my dough here. This isn't very big. It does not want a lot of grain spread out, but that's okay. All right, let's get our grease going there. This is a mixture of, I've got 1 chopped up apple, I've got some raisins, I've got chopped walnuts, I've got some cinnamon, I've got some raw sugar, and I'm just gonna, just like when we were making the pizza, I'm gonna smear this inside. And of course, the thinner you have this dough spread out, the more rolls it's gonna have when it's rolled up. Okay. Let's roll. Pinch it shut. And then I would just place this. In fact, I'm going to place it because I'll just take this one home and cook in later. I'm gonna. I pinch the roll so it was sort of sealed, tucking the ends under a little bit so that nothing's gonna fall out the sides. And I already sprayed some ham in this container. And that's going to sit there. This will rise, this amount is the same as this one. So it's going to rise up to about, just nicely above this. This is an 8.5 or 8 by 4 inch pan. I'll cover it with plastic wrap, set it aside. Once it's raised, I put it in the oven and cook it.
Are you done?
I think I've got everything. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, before you ask questions. There are in the handouts you'll get, there's a page back here. I have a different equipment that I use, things like using an oven thermometer, the baking stone. It talks about the pizza peel and loaf pans and cooling racks and stuff like that. Is it in the stuff they have right now?
No.
No. Okay, it'll be in the handout that you get. And so a lot of questions you'll have may be answered there. Also, there are places online that have excellent information about this particular type of bread. If you went to artisanbreadin5.com, which will be on your handout, or if you just go to your search and just type in bread in 5 minutes, or healthy bread in 5. Where's my book here? Here's one of them, Artisan Bread in 5. I don't know where
The other one's over here.
It's over there. But Artisan Bread in 5 or Healthy Bread in 5. The authors of this book have got a website that answers so many questions. And if you have a question that you can't find on there, anytime I've asked a question, I've got an answer within 24 hours. They're very quick to answer. There's also lots of free recipes, so you don't have to buy the books. You go online and they'll have free recipes, tips, techniques. If you have
Videos.
problems, there are videos. You can go to YouTube and type in Artisan Bread in 5, and the authors of the book are showing you, the shaping, when you first take it out and shape it into a nice little ball. They'll show you the consistency. They'll show you just different processes. They'll go through the whole mixing it up and actually watching them put it in the oven so you can see what to do. A lot of information there. One more thing, if you don't have the time to wait 2 hours for your bread to rise, one thing you can do at night before you go to bed, get your loaf out, make it whatever shape you're going to make it, whether it's in a loaf pan or just the little free-form loaf, put it on your pan, cover it with plastic wrap, and put it back in the fridge. Because no one's touching it, by the next morning, it's going to have grown a little bit. There's going to be more bubbles inside. Take it out. You're going to preheat your oven. Turn it up by about 25 degrees. So if it says 450, put it at 475 because the dough is cold. So preheat your oven by about 25 degrees more than it would normally be on the recipe. and put the dough in there. You don't have to wait for it to sit out for 2 hours because it did all that sitting for the whole overnight in the fridge. And you can do the same thing if you want to prep it in the morning and then come home after work, turn that oven on, take that pan out, and just put it in the fridge. Okay, I think that's all. Yes. These I got at Smart Final. They come in sets of 2. They also have square ones, like my yeast, like my flour was in. Down there.
The round ones are really way better though, because with the square ones it gets caught in the corners. Yeah.
Although if you're using your hand, you stick your fingers in there as you mix the mix. Probably.
Where did you get the roller?
The roller. You can get this at, you can probably get it at
Bed Bath &
anywhere.
Beyond.
Yeah, Bed Bath & Beyond, the Kitchen Collection over in the Lancaster Marketplace. Anywhere they're selling other rollers, you can find, and I think they call it like a pastry roller. I just like it. You can also use the big one.
In the handout we have right now, it's just the enriched bread.
Yeah.
But we will
Okay.
You're getting all
Yes.
the recipes.
You'll get 4 recipes. You'll get the master recipe, which is the one we just made all these things with. You'll also get that master. This one is half wheat, half white, and you'll get one that's 100% wheat. The same thing with the enriched. There'll be half wheat, half white, also one that's 100% whole wheat. Somebody over here.
Plus some other ones.
Plus some other ones. And you can find more online. We're good? Okay, Debbie's going to talk to you about spreads. Okay. I'm going to wash my hands and I'll come back. Oh, here. Oh, you want the microphone? Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about spreads. First of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the cinnamon rolls that those of you that came early got to hear got to smell. That is my mom and my grandma's recipe, and I didn't really think about this growing up, but it is also a no-knead recipe. You just mix up the dough. It's not quite as loose a dough as this no-knead one is, but you just mix it up. You don't do any kneading. You stick it in the fridge overnight. You take it out. It rolls out so easy. You just roll it out. You put butter and sugar and stuff on it. You make this yummy topping. Put it in the bottom of the pan. Roll it up. Cut it up. You have cinnamon rolls. They're so easy. Every time I make them, I think, why do I not make these all the time? And I know why, because I wouldn't eat the whole pan because they're so good. So I have to be careful not to do them very much. Okay, we made 5 different spreads for you to try with your breads tonight. There's 2 tables back there. When you go back to do the tasting table, you can go on both sides because everything's on both sides. We have I'm trying to think what we have. We have a strawberry fruit spread recipe, and all the recipes I believe you have in handouts. It's just made with dried strawberries and sugar and water, and you boil it up on your stove and mush it up, and it's delicious. It's so easy to make. We did a cinnamon butter recipe that's delicious on the little croissant rolls that she has back there. It's really good. In fact, we have it right next to it. We did one called Suzanne's Dipping Sauce. Suzanne is the lady that taught me how to do the no-knead bread class. I took a couple classes with her up in Utah. And it's a recipe that she found somewhere that's great for the artisan kind of breads. So that's kind of at that end of the table with that. We also did a Tuscan potato spread recipe that you can put on pita breads or flat kind of breads. It's like the focaccia bread it'll go really good with. And it would really be just really good mashed potatoes. So when I made it up, I'm like, oh, this is like loaded mashed potatoes. It's so good. And then, what's the last one? Oh, the chickpea one. So it's like a hummus. So it's like a hummus recipe. So we have all those back there to try, plus all the breads. And I talked a little bit about grinders before. We're not going to talk about grinders so much today. Well, actually, we've got a few minutes. So does anyone have questions about grinders? Because I can ask them. I don't know if I can answer them. No questions. How many? Wow. We just answered all your questions tonight. This is so cool. Yeah. Okay, she asked where you get Vital Wheat gluten from. You can get it from grocery stores in the baking aisle. They have it like where the flour is. You can also get it at health food stores. You can also get it from Bulk supply places like Walton's and Emergency Essentials and some of the places do long-term food storage, they also sell it. Yeah. You know, I don't know the storage life on it. I say about 5 years. You know that?
Well, I don't, all I know is my sister, once I open it, I put it in the fridge, and I've never had any bad
She
luck.
said when she opens hers, she puts it in the fridge. She's never had any problem with it. To me, it's kind of like your whole wheat. When you grind it, you want to just, it's not whole wheat, but you want to keep it some, like in your freezer or your fridge. Mine's actually just on the shelf. I've been using it for 2 years and it's still working great. So, but you do want to have it in something that's airtight. And bugs will get into it. They like it. So make sure it's in something bug-proof. Yeah.
Also something you buy like bulk meats. When
Uh-huh.
you put it airtight, then I put it back in my fridge.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about yeast. One of the things Tammy didn't talk too much about is there's 2 philosophies of the no-knead breads. The one that we talked about today is called the quick rise method because it uses more yeast. There are some that are slow rise methods where when you make up the dough's made up exactly the same, but you're only using 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of yeast. And so it sits on your counter for like 20 hours before you can start doing anything with it instead of 2 hours. So there's a lot longer sitting on your counter thing, but you use a lot less yeast. Yeast, you can, cheapest to buy in like the 1 pound hermetically sealed foil packages. If you store it in your freezer, it'll store 10 plus years. Okay, a year in your fridge, not so long on your shelf, a couple months on your shelf. It's a living organism, so in the freezer or the fridge, it slows down the dying of it. I don't know what it does. That sounds terrible. But I will throw, I have yeast in my fridge or in my freezer that I, every now and then will take a new one out that I've had in there for 10 years and it's still working. It still works great. So, don't look at the little expiration dates on your yeast unless you are only doing it at room temperature. And then it won't store as long. All right, anything else about yeast or anything else that has to do with bread in general?
Let's say too, if you're having trouble with the wheat dough being like fluffy, you'll notice on my wheat dough, it's actually got very tiny bubbles, but you'll find this out later. That refrigerator rise I was talking about, they say it will give you nice bigger bubbles than the,
Which is what my cinnamon roll recipe is, the refrigerator rise. You leave it in there like overnight and let it rise. It's like a slower rise that works really well. So, yeah, that works good too. So just a little bit slower rise so that you get a little bit bigger lift. And the vital wheat gluten is really important, like she said, when you're doing the whole grain breads, because it does help them rise. Otherwise, they're going to be flat and hit like bricks, and nobody's going to really want to eat them. Hockey pucks, We've all had bread like that. Okay, any other questions?
You were saying you figured out the cost of...
Oh yes, I did. It's in the book. It's in the Healthy Bread in 5 Minutes a Day book. They have 2 books out, the same authors, and it's $1.70 for 4 loaves. To do one of these, which makes 4 loaves. So really cheap. How much? I don't know. You can pay up to $6 for an artisan, thing of bread, and you can make it for like 40 cents. Okay, think it. How much money you're going to save by using your food storage. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
one thing I found, if you're not sure your yeast is working, it's still too old, put it in the lukewarm water, you put a little sugar, so it's sit 10 minutes, and if it's not boiling, probably try to bug it off that.
Right. And that information's in the bread handout that you'll be getting. But yeah, how to test your yeast is in there. With this method, you don't do that, so because you mix your yeast in with your dry stuff, so you will want to test, if you're not sure about your yeast, test some of your yeast before you try to do bread with it that it's not going to rise because it doesn't work. All right. Any other questions? Would you like to go get started eating? Okay. Go for it. Okay, let's start. I think the plates are at this end, so the lines will start down at this end and then go that way, and then it comes down. You've got 15 minutes before we start the next class.
Did I just press stop?
Yeah, press.